So I'm here today with my dear friend Cailin, and we're going to be exploring what lives in me as really the practice of content creation, which is we drop into whatever is alive between us to be expressed in the presence of this camera as a witness, and whoever watches it, whenever they watch it, are feeding into the witness. Like they're all witnesses at different points of time, and receiving what is coming alive between us.
Yeah, I love this because you and we have so many meandering conversations, and I'm like, if we recorded half the conversations that we had, I think they would be valuable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like being in the inquiry, something I just appreciate in our friendship. So I'm like, I feel excited to just see whatever wants to unfold.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, like some of the themes that we were discussing before we started recording around, and I'll phrase it as like self-regulation versus co-regulation is like a theme that was coming up in me. Like, how does one stay regulated within oneself and allow access to co-regulation, but not always need co-regulation as a way of being?
Yeah.
I'm curious how that lives in you.
Yeah, when you say that, it's like some of the language that I use for that is like self-holding. And I think we're talking about the same thing. But it's like when I am able to fully hold myself, then I can also be held by another. But if I am like gripping onto you, like I need you to hold me, then the whole thing just gets really wacky and distorted, and the person on the receiving end of that request is exhausted, I think. And then the person who's like wanting the regulation, like I think that sets you up for a like never really having the feeling of being held, because it's like we create our own safety.
Interesting. We would say so. There was an interesting thing I noticed as you enacted that.
Yeah.
Is that it like evoked this like protector provider in me? It's like a woman going, I need you to hold me. It's like it evoked this like, oh, I'm a man. It's like it was this moment of like, oh, I feel worthy of myself or something. And I've described this before as like the damsel in distress evokes the knight. Like it's that the duality of that archetype, but then the trap there can be that if the knight only feels like the knight in the presence of the damsel in distress, and everywhere else he does not have access to being the knight, then it just gets like sucked into like a codependency, and the knight, it's actually, he's not really connecting to the knight in himself independently of like the woman. So that was one thing that evoked, and it's interesting for me to hear you say that you actually never feel held if you request. And can you share more?
It's like I mean, in Buddhism they would call it like a hungry ghost, and it's just like this like dark pit that can like never be fulfilled, never be filled. And I think it's kind of like that. And I mean, for myself, it's like I came into this lifetime like relationship has been my ultimate gauntlet of like learning, and here I am like 40-year-old woman, and I'm like, I think I'm like I can actually do relationship now. Not like I've arrived somewhere, but I feel like I'm like, oh no, I have a baseline level of skill. But it has taken me so many years of just like, you know, for really a long time, I just like clung to men. And it was just like, wait, why? And then, you know, of course, like that is a repelling energy for men.
But that's the point I'm saying, though, like not.
You know, for a period of time, some men will want to play into that, but then they get exhausted, and it's not, I mean, it's based in victimhood.
Right.
And so it's completely not sustainable.
But other than the sustainable part, though, I also heard you say that you don't feel held. Is that only when the men hit exhaustion? Or even as they're holding
There's like
you...
a fake sense of like safety, but I think deep down, I could always know like, wait, this isn't actually real safety. Even if I, because it would be like, oh, these moments of like, oh, like everything's okay. But I can feel like if I just even move like 2 inches, something's gonna break.
Yeah, I see.
Because so much of like the world that I used to live in was based on fantasy. And so then it's like, I was just trying to uphold the fantasy, even though I had no conscious, you know, idea that this was happening. I was just like trying, it's like, you know, a mallard duck, you know, you just see them gliding across the water, but underneath they're like,
yeah.
It's like that. And then just like, oh, a man comes along and you're like, hold me. And then he's like, okay. But eventually it's like that is also gonna break.
The moment the man's attention shifts away from holding you into, say, creating something in his life, which would support you if you're in the relationship. But in those moments, there is this like feeling of being dropped again or something.
Yeah, it's like the fear of him moving his attention. And then it's like, wait, I can't hold myself. And and so I think that in relationship, you know, the thing that's important to me in sisterhood, as well as like romantic relationship, is that I'm just coming to the table with someone who fundamentally like knows how to hold themselves. And then from there, pouring into someone from that energetic is just, it is like a pure joy. When you can just feel there's no like grip.
Either way.
It's just like gorgeous. You know, and I can feel that just in the way that it's like my friends show up for me and I show up for them. There's just a sense of like, oh, you would be totally okay without me. And what a treasure that I can be with you here and witness you like this. And that's a standard that I have. And you know, I embody that now, but this is only in the last couple of years, I think, that I've really like stepped into this.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed myself being impressed with how well you have like nurtured friendships, like multiple friendships in Asheville in like the short time that you've been here. And, you know, if I were to compare and contrast, it stood out to me. It's like I have struggled personally to nurture, like I felt met by you in our friendship. And that feels like it's, you know, reached a certain level of maturity where now we can think of doing creative projects together, like this thing or the land project. I've had that to some extent with another brother, Luca, with whom I've also collaborated. But then, like I have the story that you have been able to do that with many different humans. And I'm curious if you have a sense of, you know, you have your own perspective of what is similar between us and distinct between us. And I have some thoughts on that. I'm curious if you have your own sense of, what is the magic ingredient?
Oh my I just feel so touched by this. First, I feel really seen by you in this moment.
Lovely.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah, well, So I'll speak for just to my own experience first and then see if I can contrast the two of us. I think my experience of creating connections here is that I am feeling into like an energetic frequency in people. And even just, at my birthday the other night, right, there were maybe 13 people here that I had like chosen, right? I'm not posting like, everybody just come to my birthday. I'm like, no, I want you. I choose you. And I think the thing I'm just always feeling in people is like, to what extent are you available for full truth and like the real thing? And can you meet me in the place where like I want to feel you and I want you to feel me? That's just like baseline. And then am I just like delighted by you, And so I feel like I have cherry picked people from different, like, it's like all of my friends, they're not from one particular, like this group or that group. It's actually like, oh, that person is available for truth. That person is available for truth. So that's really like what I am looking for in connections. And then, I'm able to hold people's humanity and their relationship to truth all in one. So I see a lot, which I could use that as a weapon and be like, oh, this thing is a little off or that thing. But I fundamentally really trust people's spiritual process. And so I think that is one thing that is unique for me, is that I'm like, I really have a high level for approval for wherever people are on the map of being a human.
Yeah, that feels right. And that for me is like embodied in a phrase that I often hear you use, which is, I like that for you.
Yeah.
That I've learned that phrase from you of like, I like that for you. And there is this, at least the way that phrase lives in me now, is that it creates this like spaciousness in my system to accept you where you are, and actually it creates space for me between acceptance and like respect/inspiration. It's like, I like that for you. It's like, there is like something distinct here. There is a lot that I don't know, and I accept you for where you're at, who you are, because I've enjoyed spending time with you. And it's perhaps not how I would do it, but I'm different, and I don't have to like the hierarchy in which I see things does not need to apply to you. And I think that has been an edge for me, and like it's been a strong edge for me, and this this came up in like a reflection that Luca gave me too, that you have and like another brother gave me too, like you have a very clear hierarchy of things, and then there's no space for another human's hierarchy of things.
Exactly,
And even as I'm speaking to it, this is the first time I'm phrasing it in this way. It's like, like my hierarchy of things can override the possibility that another human might also have an hierarchy of things, and it's valid for them. There's something about that. There's like more spaciousness or something.
This is like really revealing something for me, because I've never really slowed down to fully think about this question in this way, and I'm like, man, just the divinity of all people just being on their path.
Right.
Like, but I can feel people. It's like, because I feel like I'm selecting people that are really attuned to truth, I can just feel people moving closer and closer and closer to who they authentically are. Like, I'm just remembering when you quit your job, how elated I was.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was like, I feel like I just quit my job. I'm remembering when I quit my corporate job, but I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I felt this huge just like sense of relief in my system because I could feel you just moving closer and closer to truth.
Right.
And I'm like, great, get a handyman job.
Yeah.
Love this
I also
for you.
remember being surprisingly feeling supported or something.
Yeah.
I shared with you that I'm gonna become a handyman, and you're like, oh, that sounds so right for you. I was like, interesting. Like somehow I wasn't expecting that as a reflection, and that, you know, that was a phase for me. Like, I'm no longer seeking that. But it revealed something to me.
Totally.
It's like it revealed to me, I think I shared this with you, just how rotten home structures are. Like, modern day, like, housing structures. There's a lot of rot underneath the surface. And I was like, okay, I needed to see that firsthand with my eyes to be like, oh no, I want to create a different kind of home. Like, I don't want this rot. So
and I think that it's like it's important for us in the human experience to, like, I have a high value on going into all of these nooks and crannies.
Yeah, I feel that.
You know, I'm just like, that's fucking what my soul is doing in this lifetime. And I mean, I can either get on board with that or just judge the shit out of myself.
Right.
But I've just learned, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I went on that side quest and I did this. And, you know, I just got out of this relationship, right, that ultimately wasn't aligned. Yeah. But oh my God.
Did you know it was a side quest when it started?
You know,
at some level.
I think we both.
I see.
I think we both actually knew.
Interesting.
On a subconscious level, I think we actually both knew fairly early on.
I see.
That it was not going to develop into a long-term connection. And just the divinity, though, of us being like, we're going to do this whole process thoroughly. That was the medicine for me.
Thoroughly to discover patterns?
To discover, like, it would have been one thing to just be like, you know, I don't really think we're going to end up together. So let's just, after 3 or 4 dates, let's just call it a day. Yeah. That just didn't feel true. You know, and so I think we both needed the medicine of going all the way down to feel like, oh, that energetic that I felt, oh, wait, how does that actually develop? And what's really there when we just like take off every single layer? You know, because the third date, right, it's different than what you're sharing 3 months in. Yeah, it's just different. And so it's like my soul, I'll speak for myself, and I think he would have his own version of this. It's like my soul needed to go on that whole trajectory to experience that and be like, oh, okay, this is where that leads. And it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just not aligned.
Right.
And I'm like, we did it in like 3.5 months. Yeah. And it's like, I back my soul in going down, you know, what could seem like a rabbit hole. But I totally back my soul doing that.
Interesting.
So.
Yeah, so I like take that in, and because, you know, this could contrast with normie dating wisdom, especially for what both of us are seeking, which is like committed life partnership in service of like creating family. And I could imagine a more normie dating wisdom being like, if you just discuss the specifics, and if it's not aligned, actually, I suppose there's wisdom on both sides. It's like, date outside of your type, do not.
I mean, normie, it's like, normie dating wisdom at this point is just not actually, and I don't even know normie. It's like, what does that even mean? What does that even mean? But yeah, I actually think most like whatever dating advice out there, I actually feel like they would totally back the way I handled it, the way I moved through.
Interesting.
I actually think they would because it's like I stayed with myself. he stayed with himself. We did not go into codependent patterns. We were honest about the truth.
Yeah.
We deepened in intimacy and conversations that mattered. We did it in a pretty short period of time. And we learned so much.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't even think that whatever we want to call normie dating advice, I don't even know that they would be like, don't do that. So I don't know.
If I were to phrase all of this, or like frame this using, internal family system of parts work language, what I saw you engaging in, and in some ways I was on a parallel journey myself, was discovering like what parts of me are drawn in and what parts of me are pulling back. And in that journey, seeing what these parts are, because a lot of these parts were like very blended in me and like kind of unconscious ways in which I showed up.
Yeah.
And seeing like that polarity in relation with another human being, another woman, for me, was just a real gift, because like I just have much better clarity of what was drawing me in and what was creating hesitation. And there was a lot of unknowns as to whether this could be navigated in a way that I could stay individuated, she could stay individuated, and we meet to create something. Like, is that the right timing? Is it not the right timing? There were just these unknowns, which there is a voice in me that goes, oh, you could probably have gauged that sooner.
But it's like, bro, we were in a hurricane.
Right.
So I mean, and I know, I'm not that I don't think you're actually being hard on yourself. But I like the way and I've reflected this to you, but the way that I saw you navigate that relationship, like truth to truth to truth to truth, and just like admitting each part in each stage to yourself, and then initiating those conversations with her. Like, maybe you could have like made a shift sooner. But also, I'm like, the hurricane was like a different world.
Yeah, it was a different world.
And so I actually just think, the time that you did have in like cohabitating and being with her, like it served you on your path. And I just, I saw you, again, I've reflected this, but like I saw you receive the feminine and be nourished in that way. And I saw you hold her.
Yeah, beautiful. And it really brought me into, and I shared this with her towards, at the point where we like decided to not continue exploring monogamous committed partnership, it was that, this is how more well-adjusted humans relate, or something, like people with
like emotionally sober adults.
Yeah, like you talked about, at the age of 40, you're finally like relating in this way. And I also had that same thing of like, I'm 37 and I'm finally cracking the code, and I'm just like, why? It's like, why did it take, part of me goes like, why did it take this long?
I know.
And I'm curious if you have had that inquiry for yourself, and what comes up for you, like
Well, my north node is in the 7th house, which is the house of relationships. So it's like I'm literally here to learn relationships with others. But it's like I came into this life, my south node is in the 1st house, which is like self and sense of self. And it's like I've always been so clear on who I am, right? And relationship has just been the like, all right, we're just going to learn this. But when I go into that, like, oh God, Cailin, why didn't you get it by now thing? I really, I really tend to just zoom out. And I'm like, beyond this lifetime, this is just what my soul has been yearning for, to learn. And so it's like, okay, whatever, 40 years old, whatever that means in this 3D construct. But I'm like, oh, I back my soul in the level of learning that I have gone into inside of a relationship. Because you can't, I don't think you can have this level of mastery that I believe that I hold now. And I mean, you know, whatever, we'll see my next partnership. I'll be on my hands and knees like, I don't know. You know, like, it's easy for me to say this right now. But I don't think you can have like a level of mastery without like fucking it up over and over and for years and years. Because I don't think you get the level of depth. I think there are some people, right, who maybe come from households where they had a certain kind of like communication modeled and like healthy relating. That is so rare. But like true depth of love, I just think that.
And passion of sex, I would add to that. Like I often wonder, because one of the bars that I really held in my relationship with Soleil was this, like, yeah, we are not gonna let new normals get created. Like, we are not gonna allow new, like, disconnected states to become the new normal, and then like even more disconnection to become the, because
that
like,
is just.
And at the end of the, you know, closing that chapter, I was like, you know, I could see myself doing, past me, like from 10 years ago, could have done this with you for another 8 years. You know, it's like just.
And that version of you would have been thrilled to do that.
Probably. I mean, it's like thrilled to the extent that I had capacity to be thrilled.
Yeah.
Because I had all of these different addictive patterns, but I could see myself just. Yeah, and it's almost just like it lived in me as like, yeah, there's a certain level of connection that you have, and then something emerges, some conflict, and now. Do we like meet that? Like, do we see what this is and go there, or just turn slightly away, but then in that slight turning away, the level of connection drops just a little bit. And now that is the normal. And then there is something that emerges here, it drops even more. And then, you know, 20 years down the line, you're in a sexless like, marriage, you're just like,
yeah.
Or like the guy is like popping ED pills or something just to, you know, it's like, it's, which seems like
it's a very common, it's
just
the common thing that's happening.
Advertisements are there for, you know, like men's health stuff and.
Totally. No, it is the common thing that's happening. Yeah. I think. I'm curious. Just following this original thread of like co-regulation and holding oneself, I'm curious like what you learned about that in this relationship with Soleil, and like what you noticed, because it's there. I think there is something in particular about like cohabitating that happens with co-regulation. And so I'm just.
Say that last part
There's
again.
something that happens, I think, that's very specific as in cohabitating as it relates to co-regulation.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling into that. I like that question, and I'm kind of also feeling into what is the right amount to reveal.
Yeah, totally.
And there is pieces that I can speak to that I think would respect, the sanctity of the ourself and, you know, the container. Which is that, I noticed it was really critical for me to maintain a connection to my individuation practices. And there is a bunch of practices that I have that I do to stay individuated, like stay in my body.
Yeah.
Which, you know, like 8 years ago, if you had said, stay in your body, I was like, what are you?
I am in my body.
like, there was no awareness. Like right now I can feel so much more of like my belly, like my breath can drop in deep. And earlier on, like, I don't know, 8 years ago, I was like mostly like here, and it's like this is where I was. So there was no awareness
space,
that I was not in my body.
Yeah.
So that, I think in days that I was able to state with my individuation practices and maintain a connection to my creative output. So
Yeah.
basically land in my body, and for me, creativity comes from eros. Like I feel that not just in neo-tantric or tantra says,
Yeah,
like
totally.
I felt it literally, like when I feel, and when I feel aroused by a muse, the artist in me comes alive, and the artist in me sees art and beauty everywhere and wants to create all sorts of art, like in logic, in like content. It's like it's everything in writing.
Yeah.
It's no longer about then the muse who inspires that in me. And Soleil and I had a beautiful muse artist like connection. Like early on, it was so alive between us. Like there was some like rituals that emerged between us that I've never had. Like I've done these rituals in these temple settings, but them just emerging in connection with one woman consistently, like just being able to see like the hood of Madonna in her. It's like these different goddesses just like in her as I'm like connecting with her intimately. It's just mind blowing, it's just like there's nothing like it. And it's just like it's in some ways like just cemented my feeling of like I'm kind of done with temple play, and I just want to create divinity, because I've had a taste of it, and now I just want that. And it builds, it like builds over time, and there's space for more. And the key there for me is I need to maintain a clear connection to
Yourself.
my body, so that I'm tapped into the source of my eros, which is my pelvis. And that can only happen when I'm in my individuation practices, that I'm consistently embodied and not in anxiety like here state. And then have my channels of creativity always accessible, where I'm like writing, I'm studying, I'm creating like that steadily every day. 1 hour, 2 hours, doesn't matter how long, but it's like that channel needs to be there. And that's what I mean by that, like the knight and damsel in distress thing, which is that I need, if in connection with someone who seems to me like a damsel, like a muse, and I feel aroused into creativity in relationship to her, can I take that creativity and can I be a knight independent of her? Like is she reminding me more of the knight that I already am, or am I just a knight when I'm around her, and then the rest of the time I'm just collapsed into numbing and just like not doing the things that my soul is here to do, dead end job or whatnot. And so that feels like key, like staying individuated, maintaining a connection to my creativity, and then continue to be inspired by it. It's like so magical. Like just women are so magical. Like it's so ways. Like I feel like having a menstrual cycle is wild, like just like one aspect of it, but it's like so wild that there is a menstrual cycle that is like men don't have that.
Every month we go on a whole ride.
Exactly. And it's like you have in your body, there's a cycle of life and death in this so profound way happening. And when it's happening in my body too, my cells are dying off, but when my cells die off, it's not like I'm just randomly bleeding from my hands or something. It's like, because it's not as visible,
right?
And for women, and I've really felt that, like
the cycle of life,
and how nourishing it feels for me, who does not have that clear of that lunar cycle of life and death, like the company of women. How good it feels.
Right.
As a man who does not have access to that.
Yeah. Like, your energy, you just like, you just keep going, you go. And I also know you rest a lot, but like your energy is very consistent. So I can imagine just being around a woman where it's like, oh yeah, our cycles and yeah, we just like rest differently and have a different relationship to life and creation. I mean, you know, I'm just remembering like even your house, your home like felt softer to me, you know, and the cats.
Yeah, I mean, it was so evident in the cats. Like the cat, like Ginger, started attacking Cumin again.
Yeah.
And he was completely softened while she was around. Like he was just like a chill cat, and they were also less codependent in the sense that they would often sit away from each other, next to each other, instead of being like entangled.
Oh, interesting.
Like while she was around, and I think they've developed that more, but I'd never seen them sit separately. So in some ways, the femininity of her presence in my house was really nourishing them, and you know, I saw Ginger like attackingly hump Cumin today. I was like, okay,
he's back. Okay, he's back. The energy of the house, the home state has been restored.
It's different.
It's different.
Yeah. I'm curious to bring this to one of the themes that you had seeded before we started recording, which is, yes, your journey of self-regulation. And I think you said how this is the first time that you're feeling excited to enter winter together.
Yeah.
And that was one of the pieces of my heartbreak, because I was like so excited to enter winter with someone, with a partner, and you know, like holiday music, Christmas markets, and snow. You know, it's like, so I was very intrigued to know more.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, wow, I'm just feeling that. Yeah, it just really landed for me in the last couple of days, as you know, we were talking, or as everybody was talking about the snow that was coming for this morning. I was like, wow, like I'm just I feel so in tune with the seasons being here in North Carolina. I'm like, oh, we get a full fall that's just gorgeous, right? And like summer was beautiful, and spring was stunning, and you know, and so coming, like I came at the beginning of winter last year, like around this time, and so I didn't really get the transition between fall and winter to like appreciate that. And so, first of all, I just feel so held by this land. I'm like in the transition. I'm like, okay, I'm like ready for it. But then I just realized I'm like in my body every other year and every other time that I've thought about winter, it's like there's like a freeze response. Like, I don't want the winter to come. Like almost, I mean, really like terror in my body. Because I just had, you know, have historically just had such a difficult time like regulating my body,
temperature,
my temperature, and just like my nervous system. Like I would just be so cold, like terrifyingly cold, like so
even in your home.
Even like I'd have to turn the heat way up.
Interesting.
You know, and I remember even just like my roommates in California, they'd be like, okay, we cannot turn the heat up that much to like accommodate you. And so it's just been this lifetime thing of just feeling like, geez, it is just hard for me to get warm in winter, because I didn't have like an internal, it's like I didn't have an internal sense of like safety and density and like groundedness and rootedness in my body. And so, you know, it's taken me years and years and years to develop this. And like, I never did it to like enjoy winters, but I'm like, oh, this is just a natural like side effect that's happening. And, you know, when I was telling you before we started recording, like I looked at a photo of myself from about 8 years ago when I was first diagnosed with MS. And I mean, just looking at that, you can just see like the inflammation just in my face. And, you know, that was back when I was like still dyeing my hair blonde. And, you know, that it's like looking at that, I look at myself now and I'm like, wow, I'm just so much healthier. And it's like, I just know how to be here.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to actually take a look at that picture and maybe even like present it.
Oh
here,
yeah, totally.
Because this has been one of the most fascinating subjects of inquiry for me, and I've brought this up a few times with you around like tracking visible inflammation in people's faces, bodies, and contrasting that with what wisdom they're spouting and being like, how is that working out for you? Because you look fucking inflamed to me. Like what? What are you even talking? Like, you know, you're saying all these things, but your body is like burning up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm curious. You know, I've brought this a few times with you, and I'll be like, yeah, what do you think of this person? It feels like there is some inflammation there. And given your own tracking this within you, like, how do you relate to? Yeah, this can be a strong judgment that I have often. It's like when I see people who are not taking care of their bodies or I perceive them to have inflammation, that I'm wondering if they're aware of or not, and hesitant to bring it up. And this, you know, relating back to earlier what we said about more spacious acceptance of human journey. I'm curious how you relate to this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actually think I take a broader look at it, and I just like notice how vibrant. I notice people's vibrancy and like connection to life. And I also notice people's nervous systems. And then inflammation is like also can just be a part of that. But
I see,
I actually relate, like the way I walk through the world is I feel people's nervous systems. And I'm like, oh, if I'm having a direct conversation with someone who I can tell, like I can just feel like, oh, their nervous system is tiny and has low capacity. I'm always going to bring the truth, you know me. But like,
how do you bring that? Like, that seems edgy to present.
Oh no, I would never just say that if I just met someone. I like that. There's nothing in it, you know. Like the shit that I notice about people that I never say. I'm just walking around the world.
Yeah, it could be a podcast series or stuff.
Literally.
Or like a YouTube series where you click pictures of different people.
Photos of people.
And then
I'm like,
list down what you notice.
Oh yeah, I mean, Garrison and I, you know, we used to just play this like game of like, okay, that couple, okay, let's track the nervous systems. What do I notice? You know, I can just like.
Interesting, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I had a similar thread with Saleh, more around like relational dynamics and what we notice in terms of like how couples are stacking up or something. And
I'm like, I could do this all day. So I mostly withhold.
Yeah.
Because it's not even withholding. It's just like, it's meeting people where they're at, and there's nothing in it, right? People aren't opting in to like getting my feedback on what I see for them, you know, in the world. But was like, oh, you know, if I'm interacting with someone and it's like, oh, okay, it's clear, like they have a limited capacity in their nervous system, or they're just like, they're living their life destabilized, then there's a certain way I am going to handle them. Right. And so it's like, I'm always going to say the truth, but it's like, I gotta be like, okay, am I going to kind of come from the side? And like, how do I actually, okay, they're completely destabilized. I'm going to create the grounding in this conversation and do the holding. Because that's like, I just value groundedness. And then, you know, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. So I forget what your original question was. It was about how I see people. Yeah. And you so there is a little, and you know, I'd be lying if I said there's not some judgments that come through, like, but mine is more around people's nervous systems.
Yeah, no, that is an interesting distinction. And I appreciated the broadening that you presented.
Yeah.
And it is true that mine is more around inflammation and physical strength or something. And I'm actually not as, or as I hear you speak to tracking nervous systems, I can connect to that sense within me, but it's not a constant connection that I have. And in a way, the way I relate to that is like, how safe am I feeling in someone, like that is how I relate to it, like how safe am I feeling in someone else's presence. But I don't think that is enough to gauge someone else's nervous system capacity.
Because for me, I'm like, I mostly feel safe no matter where I am, and I'm just like gauging to what extent could this person receive me, all of me.
Yeah, interesting.
And it's actually, it's like, if I just bring this whole fucking thing to every person that I'm just having a tiny little conversation with, like, I'm gonna overwhelm this town. Is the, you know, and that doesn't mean like, oh my God, I just need to like hold back and be small, but it's actually like acting in resonance, you know, like is a skill. And I think that I do value that as well. Because I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like my closest friends, you know, I bring all of me, you know, I bring all of me in, you know, in our friendship. Like I have, you know, a handful of friends here who it's just like, I can bring all of me. They have nervous systems that can handle anything. And so, but most people don't.
And when you're with such a person who, and I'll specify a specific archetypical example of what a small nervous system might look like. When you're with a person who, and this is a personal challenge I have, which is that if they start, in my perspective, rambling about different things dissociatively, and in my energetic eye, I almost see them like drifting away everywhere. That can be like that. I hit my nervous system capacity, and I'm curious, like, do you just
that pattern is so agitating to me on a just like very human level. And so I have to, like, in those situations, I got to ask myself, am I interested in connection here? Like, beyond just like, oh, whatever, we see each other at dance, okay, like, am I interested? Because if I am gonna make an adjustment there, which I'd like to, it is an investment. And so I'm not going to invest in a connection because it's also risky. Like, I'm sticking my neck out. And I'm just not going to do that if I'm actually not interested. So I'm always asking myself, like, oh, do I want to like have any kind of deepening with this person? And then in those situations, I would honestly, like, a lot of times I like use like my body, you know? It's like if they're like floating out there, okay, then they actually just need grounding. And if I notice a level of agitation, it actually can turn into anger inside of me.
Same.
And so if I'm noticing anger, I'm like, wait, what needs to be adjusted? I'm gonna lose my mind if I just allow, like, and I say allow, it's like I'm not controlling the conversation, but it's like the energy's doing something, and it's actually not of service to connection.
What is it doing? What would you say it is doing?
Well, it's like a floating off.
But why does that create anger?
Because for me, if it's out of alignment, it's not actually based in truth because it's like out there. It's like a floating off kind of a thing. And so for me, like, if I'm not aligned as a manifester, that's part of how I know.
I see.
Because I'm just like, oh, anger. And then, or like, it's like an agitation, which I also have to own for myself, that is a trauma response. Like, if I'm feeling this like anger, agitation, it's not like, oh, I'm the better one.
Yeah.
It's literally
Exactly,
a
right?
trauma
It's like-
response.
For me, it's also like, oh, this is the
Okay, hold on.
capacity of my nervous
Yeah,
system, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I've really learned to be like, okay, like I have to drop the righteousness, right, in the moment. Be like, okay, am I interested in any kind of depth with this person? Okay, if it's a yes, and I can drop the righteousness, then I would probably just like, you know, kind of like even just touch them and just say, hey, like, could we slow down? And just create permission for us to like take a breath. And then in that, like I might say something to the effect of like, hey, I do want to hear what you have to say. You know, I heard this, and this.
Right.
And I also noticed that like I got lost and the energy felt like it was kind of like floating away. And I really want to be present with you here.
Yeah.
Can we try that again?
Yeah.
Or what else do you want? Like, what do you actually want me to know?
Yeah.
It's a risky one, but I've done it.
Yeah.
And with the right person, like actually people are so like relieved because they're also, if they're like floating off, they're having a whole disassociated experience anyways.
Yeah. You know, this reminds me of like a mutual friend of ours who shall remain unnamed for the sake of the internet. And I have like discussed sometimes like, we discuss different, we both have this like thread of social prankster energy. And I feel like we have discussed this specific theme. And we joked about how like an interesting thing to try in that moment, because they are anyways floating away. They don't really see you. Is to like have a placard cut out of you ready and just like keep that and just like walk away. or just like,
oh my God,
generally just start like walking away and like turning away.
Okay.
In that moment, I was like, this is definitely like, you know, teenage prankster.
Yeah, this is definitely, wow, this is your particular thread that you follow.
In what way?
I'm sorry, this is from the guy who's like, Cailin, you know, I feel curious about the fact that you seem to be able to make friends easier than me.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I'm just like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you see why there is that distinction, right? Because and you know, I'll say that for me, this in some ways relates to the UB.
Wait, the what?
The UB, like the unattached burden, or the spirit entity, and you know, there's like some video content that's gonna come. It's fun to have that red thing going.
Is that gonna mess us up?
It's like adds a little bit of a disco vibe to this. You know, as the sun is setting, it's like every now and then comes on.
I'm just like, I don't want to ruin the production value.
Nah, it'll be fine. I mean, you know, I'm trying to create like, I want this to be like a real experience.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
You know, it's fun to have, and there's like a whole theme I've seen on YouTube now of like people just want the real shit. They don't want,
totally.
like,
they don't want the
it's
totally.
okay if the lighting is a little like mood lighting and
a little mood lighting. Yeah, the sun is like going down here.
Yeah, exactly.
We're in winter.
Yeah, it's like the transitions that we're speaking about are happening as the video, and instead of just being in a fake studio lighting that just nothing changes. That's my orientation anyways. But I have some like video content coming up where I'm gonna release the recording where I released the UB, and I'm like I'm annotating it right now because it's like a masterful session.
Wait, for people who have no idea what you're talking about, do you want to just give some context?
The context is that I mean, this is such a wild thing to say out loud, but I had external spirit entity that was in my body driving a lot of my addictive compulsive behaviors like porn addiction, food addiction, that I believe entered me in a moment of childhood rape, and it's been with me throughout. And I had this whole journey last year where at some point I was like, oh, there is something in me in this journey of noticing what parts act in what ways and trying to understand what their motivations are. And then most of these parts are like inner children.
Yeah.
And once I see them, they're like, oh, so grateful to be seen by me. And they realize I'm no longer 5 because they think I'm 5. And then they unblend from me and stay with me and don't just hop into the driver's seat of my car that my life is. And make me do things that then I regret later on. Like that's been like the inner parts work journey.
Yeah.
But in that journey, at some point I was like, wow, this part that I'm interacting with inside me feels massive. It doesn't feel like an innocent inner child, and it's like just a massively powerful energy that has pure malicious intent, to the point that in a certain conversation that I had with it, I was like, yeah, why do you want me to suffer? And its answer was like, oh, I just want you to suffer. Like, there's nothing. Yeah, I just want you to suffer for the rest of your life. And I had, in that inner conversation, I was like, no, actually, that's not what I want to do. And that was like the first boundary. But then I read this book, which is like, goes into internal family systems, but specifically talks about external spirits being lodged inside human bodies and how to work with them. And I was just like, oh, holy fuck, I think this is a UB, this is a spirit. And for someone who comes from a science engineering background, it was like mind blowing. It's like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. But then I had a session with the guy who wrote the book, Bob Falconer, and I recorded that session and 2 sessions before and 2 sessions after, because there's like a distinct. And it's almost like whenever I would come close to a wounding of mine, I would get dissociated, numbed out, disconnected, and this UB would emerge, the spirit would emerge, and I would suddenly feel like I had power. Yeah. But then this UB was very maliciously mischievous. And I still have, like it was pokey energy, a lot of pokey energy, but like provocative, but in a very like evil way, like just wanting to hurt, it's like not, like for example, the part of me that inquired with you around, when you see all of these judgments, when you have these judgments, when you see these truths, when do you decide to reveal it and when you don't? The UB in some ways had these spiritual powers because it was literally a spirit. So it could see where people's weaknesses were and presented me all of these, and I was blended with it, so I would just like go straight for it, and it would be ensconced in this like, oh, I'm just speaking my truth, like helping you out, you don't have capacity to receive truth or something. But it was like, no, I'm doing this because I want you to feel miserable. Yeah, that was the reality. How did we enter this tangent?
I don't remember how we entered this tangent. I just said, do you want to clarify what that is? Yeah. But why were we talking about it? I forget.
Yeah, I forget too. I'm curious what it's like for you to hear, because it's such a wild thing to... I've shared with you once before, but I don't think we've really like heard.
Well, it just has me kind of have like an appreciation for the journey that you've been on in this lifetime. And also just seeing you in where you are in like relationship with friends and with community, right? In the development of like the authenticity of it, that I feel like this thread is kind of giving me more like more insight into like where you came from.
I see. Interesting.
And so it sort of contextualizes just like some of these patterns of like, I don't know, like, do I even like want to stay in Asheville, and do I like fit in here, and like I can see how that with that part being out front, how that must have like impacted relationships in a pretty significant way in the past. And now that that's been removed, it's like you're literally like learning in real time. Like, what is it like to have like the essence of Vignesh lead?
Right.
And that can be, I think that's a clumsy process, you know? So I just, when I hear that as your friend, you know, I just have a lot of compassion and admiration for the journey that you've been on of like getting into relationship, you know, with yourself and your trauma and like everything that has moved through you in this lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when that when I was in that polarity so clearly, like the you, be, and me, like just seeing the distinction, it really felt like it was. I mean, it lived in me, that the essence of me is kindness.
Yeah.
And it was just like so misaligned. The pokiness was so misaligned. And I was like told a falsehood or something by this entity in me. It's like, oh, it is like kind to reveal truth, which it is, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like, is the truth really reaching the person?
Yeah, it's like truth in resonance. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like giving people what they can really receive. And you do have to take some risks, I believe, to like be in the full truth sometimes. And yeah, it can cause harm if people just are not in a place to receive it. So I've really learned some lessons like with I have incredible sight and I see energy too. I'm like, I see all sorts of things and I'm just like, do, do, do. And then sometimes people will ask me like, oh, wait, what do you see? And I'm like, well, do you really want to know? I need your full opt-in, you know? And, and it's like speaking at the level to which people can hear and receive it. That is going to serve so much more. And for me, like, I am committed to living a life of service. And I'm also clear that like, and, you know, one of the reflections that I received at my birthday this last weekend, you know, is when people come into my field, they just feel truth and stuff's going to get brought up anyways. So it's like, I don't even need to do very much, I think. Sometimes. I don't need to say much. It's like, I just embody this and then whatever's going to come out of you being in my presence, I trust that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Actually.
You know?
Yeah.
And like, that I don't even need to say anything half the time.
Right.
People come to me and they're like, okay, so I've pretty much hated you for like 2 years, but now I see you and I like you and I want to like be in on this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God, you know, but it is.
Could you tell in those moments that I suppose you could tell that they were disturbed in your presence?
Yeah, I mean, I can just, you know, I know. I mean, I'm just thinking even like, you know, to the group of friends that we were with last week, like, you know, 13 or 14 people who were we were pretty new to each other. You know, one of the women was like, you are polarizing, aren't you?
Yeah.
She was like, a lot of people don't like you. And a lot of people like you, but it's very split.
Yeah.
And I was like, yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it was really interesting. There's two things that were coming to me. One is this notion that if you just hold that frequency of connection to truth in yourself, you don't need to say anything.
No.
Like, as bodies, like, somatically attuned to each other, whatever is the message that you might have tried to speak out in words is going to reach them.
It's totally.
And it will probably reach them in a much better way than you trying to phrase
Oh
that
yeah.
thing. You know?
I
It's like,
mean, the thing I'm really leaning into is just practicing kind of like a level of neutrality and spaciousness. Like, of course, I have clear opinions and sight on things. And I'm just like, being in relationship with people and being around new people, it's like, oh, just like, can I just bring curiosity? Right? And then people just feel me and feel the truth that moves through me. And they're gonna have whatever experience they're gonna have, but I'm gonna reflect back the things just with my energy, the things they may not have seen about themselves, and then they'll like work with that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's enough.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll say something, but like,
Yeah.
I don't even think I need to.
And there's like a practical way and there's like a certain way that I've relate to this notion that I practically intentionally integrated into my life, which is, I just call it silent speaking, which is whatever it is that I want to say, I'll say it silently a few times.
Yeah.
And trust that that's all. It's
Yeah.
like sometimes maybe that's all it needs.
Yeah.
And sometimes just doing that dissipates whatever it is that the urgency that I feel to share something, like it's just dissipated that. And I suspect that, like we are all humans are such sensitive beings, like it reaches people silently. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, just an energetic transmission that speaks more than anything, I think. Like,
it makes me want to upload this video without any audio.
Oh, now we're in the club. Okay, this is getting weird now.
Yeah,
it's getting.
See, where are we at? Okay, yeah, cool. An hour.
All right. An hour.
This was fun.
Okay, this was so fun.
I really enjoyed it. I think it was quite the journey.
Quite the journey.
And there were things that I was able to go deeper into. Because there were themes that we discussed that were already present in our conversation, but it just really allowed me a chance to go deeper into some of these things that we hadn't yet.
Totally. No, I just, I really appreciate this exploration. And I feel like, this is a pretty good representation of just the things that we are sort of pondering anyways, in our friendship.
Yeah.
Which I always just so, appreciate. And,
Yeah. No, and that's how it lives in me, is like I want to really create organic content in a way. It's like another way of looking at it is like, like a reality show of sorts, in the sense that we are capturing what is truly alive between us.
Yeah, totally. I think it's great. Just
the frequency in which, like, the theme that we talked about at the beginning of this video was
co-regulation
versus self-regulation.
Yeah.
And just in how, I mean, I consider myself fairly self-regulated. I consider you self-regulated.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that we are talking about it, but in the conversation that we are having, there is like an energetic transmission of what it means to connect from a self-regulated place.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Me asking you something without needing a specific answer. You asking me something without needing a specific answer, for you to feel regulated
safe.
and safe. It's like the subtlety of what it is. And it's so subtle, like these things. Like, I'm asking like this oftentimes, and it's like, I know you're asking me something, but really, this is what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And lately, I've allowed myself to say the thing that I sense people want to hear. Why not? Like,
why not?
Helps them stay regulated. It just requires me to say a sentence. It's fine.
It's fine.
I may not, if it happens a lot, I may not want to engage with them, but that's also fine.
Yeah.
Just keep that clean. No need to like
go on a whole journey.
Yeah.
I think you're moving past that. Like I'm present to your heart, And that's why we're friends ultimately. It's because I see you and I feel your heart in these moments. And I think there are a lot of people in this town who don't know your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, that's partly unfortunate and partly mine. I can see why that's the case. 'Cause there's an intentionally polarizing way in which I've showed up in my entry into this town. And it's been helpful to just let that go, knowing that it's almost like if I let go of the intentional polarization, then what is the actual truth in me is like there's nothing more provocative than the truest truth. You don't have enough to do anything.
Well, and then you're just standing there naked with your heart, which is intense. Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This was beautiful.
Yeah, this was really sweet.
All right.
All right, everybody. We are in the dark.
Literally.